They stood in a half circle outside the schoolhouse and waited for her to leave. No trial, no chance to speak. Just silence and stares that said everything the words didn't. Lila Hartley gripped the handle of her worn carpet bag and felt the weight of every lie they'd swallowed without question. 22 years old, a teacher with nowhere left to teach, and a name dragged through mud she'd never even touched. She could beg, she could cry, or she could walk 30 miles through country that killed people for less. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. If you're still here, stay with me until the end. Drop a like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The sun hadn't cleared the ridge yet, but the air already tasted like dust and judgment. Lila stood on the porch of the one-room schoolhouse she'd walked into 6 months ago with hope stitched tight across her ribs and watched the town decide she didn't matter. Nobody said her name. That was the part that stuck with her later, in the quiet. They just stood there. Mrs. Calloway, with her arms crossed, Henry Birch leaning against the hitching post like this wasn't worth his full attention, the preacher's wife whispering something behind her hand. Lila counted 11 people. Not the whole town, but enough. Enough to make it official. Miss Hartley, that was Mayor Dunn. He didn't look at her when he said it. Looked at the dirt instead. His hat in his hands like this pained him. Maybe it did. Didn't change what came next. We've heard the accounts, he said. From a man of standing, a man we trust. Lila's throat went tight. He's lying. Dunn flinched, just a little. That's a serious accusation. So is his. Someone behind her, she didn't turn to see who, made a low sound. Disapproval, maybe. Or discomfort. Hard to tell the difference when people had already made up their minds. You're young, Dunn said, and his voice gentled in a way that made her skin crawl. You don't understand how these things work out here. A woman alone, no family, no husband, it invites talk. And when talk turns to shades, I didn't do anything wrong. That's not the question. Mrs. Calloway's voice cut through, sharp as a hatchet. The question is whether we can trust you around our children. And the answer, Miss Hartley, is no. Lila looked at her. Really looked. This was the woman who'd brought her apple butter 2 weeks after she'd arrived, who'd smiled and said it was nice to have a proper school teacher again. Now her face was stone. It was, someone lied about me, Lila said. Her voice cracked. Just once, and she hated herself for it. And you believe him because, what? Because he's a man? Because he owns land? Because he has no reason to lie? Birch straightened up, finally interested. What's he gain from making trouble for a school teacher? Lila almost laughed. Almost. He gains exactly this. Me, gone. Dunn shook his head. If that were true, you'd have proof. I have the truth. Truth and proof aren't the same thing, Miss Hartley. Not here. Here's the thing. People talk about justice like it's something that just happens. Like the world tips itself toward fairness if you wait long enough. But standing there on that porch with the whole town looking through her like she was already gone, Lila understood what maybe she should have known all along. Justice wasn't a place you arrived at. It was a fight. And sometimes you fought it alone. She shifted the carpet bag to her other hand. It wasn't heavy. She didn't own much, but her fingers ached anyway. So that's it. You're just telling me to leave. We're asking you to go quietly. Dunn's voice dropped. For your own sake. If you make this difficult for who? Nobody answered that. Lila looked past them toward the row of buildings that made up Red Hollow. The general store, the saloon, the church with its crooked steeple. She'd walked those streets every morning for half a year, learned which boards creaked on the school steps, memorized the names of 19 children who'd looked at her like she might teach them something worth knowing. All of it gone, because one man decided she was inconvenient. I'll need supplies, she said, for the road. Dunn hesitated. Where will you go? Does it matter? The nearest town is 30 miles. I know. She met his eyes then, and he looked away first. I can walk. Mrs. Calloway made a noise. 30 miles across open prairie? Alone? That's suicide. Maybe. Lila stepped down off the porch. But it's my choice, isn't it? That's more than you're giving me here. She walked past them. Nobody moved to stop her. Nobody moved at all. The sound of her boots on the packed dirt was the loudest thing in the world. The general store was dim and smelled like coffee and lamp oil Frank Connors stood behind the counter with his arms crossed, and when Lila walked in, his face did something complicated. Not quite guilt, not quite pity, somewhere in between. "I need jerky," she said. "Hard biscuits, canteen if you've got one." He didn't move. "Lila, don't." She set $3 on the counter. It was most of what she had left. "Just the supplies." Frank stared at the money. Then he sighed, long and slow, and started pulling things off the shelves. Dried beef, a tin of crackers, a canteen that looked like it had seen better days but didn't leak when he shook it. "This is a mistake," he said quietly. "You know that, right?" "Which part? Them driving me out or me leaving?" "Both." He wrapped the jerky in brown paper. "You could stay, fight this." "With what?" "You saw them, Frank. They've already decided. People change their minds. Not about women like me." She picked up the canteen, tested the cap. "Women with no family, no husband, no one who'll vouch for them when it matters." Frank's jaw worked. "It's not right." "No," Lila agreed. "It's not." He slid the package across the counter, but didn't take the money. "Keep it. You'll need every cent. I'm not a charity case." "I know. That's why I'm offering." He looked at her, really looked, and for a second she saw something like regret. "I'm sorry, Lila. I should have spoken up. Out there." "Why didn't you?" He didn't have an answer. Or maybe he did, and it was just too ugly to say out loud. Lila took the supplies and left the money where it was. Outside, the sun had cleared the ridge. The light was thin and pale, the kind that made everything look washed out. Lila walked to the edge of town where the buildings gave way to scrub grass and hard-packed earth that stretched toward the horizon like it didn't have an end. 30 miles. She'd never walked 30 miles in her life, never been more than a day's ride from a town, never slept under open sky or gone without a roof over her head. But here's what she knew: she couldn't stay. Not in Red Hollow, where every face would remind her that she'd been judged and found guilty of crimes she didn't commit. Not where the children she'd taught would grow up believing lies about her. Better to walk. Better to risk snakes and storms and the kind of loneliness that ate people from the inside. At least out there she'd be facing something honest. She was a mile past the last building when she heard the horse. Lila turned. A rider, coming fast from the direction of town. For half a second her heart kicked hard against her ribs. Someone coming to stop her, drag her back, make this worse than it already was. But as the rider got closer, she realized it wasn't anyone from the crowd. This man was older, maybe 40, with a hard-lined face and a hat pulled low enough to shadow his eyes. He slowed as he reached her, the horse tossing its head and snorting. "You Lila Hartley?" he asked. "Who's asking?" "Name's Cole Brennan. I run cattle north of here." She didn't recognize the name. "What do you want?" "Heard what happened in town." He dismounted, slow and deliberate, and stood a few feet back, giving her space. "Heard they ran you out." "News travels fast." "Always does." He glanced past her toward the empty prairie. "You planning to walk to Pharaoh's Bend?" "That's the idea. Alone. I don't have a lot of options." Cole was quiet for a moment, then he shook his head. "That's a bad plan." "I didn't ask for your opinion." "No, you didn't." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a canteen, bigger and newer than the one Frank had given her. Held it out. "But I'm giving it anyway. 30 miles across open ground, no shade, no landmarks if you get turned around. You won't make it." Lila's hands tightened on her bag. "I'll manage. Maybe, or maybe you'll end up buzzard food and nobody'll even know to look for you." He didn't say it mean, just factual. "Take the canteen." She stared at him. "Why do you care?" "Because I don't believe the story they're telling." He met her eyes, steady. "And because no woman should have to walk 30 miles through rattlesnake country because a bunch of cowards wouldn't hear her side." Something in Lila's chest cracked. Not broke. She'd done enough of that already, but cracked. Just enough to let a little air in. "I don't know you," she said. "No, you don't. For all I know, you're worse than the rest of them." "Could be." Cole hooked the canteen back on his saddle. "But here's what I'm offering. I'll ride with you as far as Pharaoh's Bend, keep you alive, make sure you get there in one piece. After that, you never have to see me again." "Why would you do that?" "Because it's the right thing to do." He said it like it was simple. Like the world hadn't just proven to her that right and wrong didn't matter half as much as power and reputation. Lila looked at the horizon, at the land that stretched out flat and mean and indifferent, looked back at Cole Brennan, this stranger with a weathered face and an offer that sounded too good to be real. "I don't need saving," she said. "Didn't say you did. I said you need help. There's a difference." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she'd survived this long without anyone's charity, and she'd survived the next 30 miles the same way. But her feet already hurt, and the sun was climbing, and somewhere deep down she knew he was right. Alone, she might not make it, and dying to prove a point seemed like the worst kind of stupid. "If you try anything, I won't. If you do, I'll gut you." Cole's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile, hard to tell. "Fair enough." He swung back into the saddle and held out a hand. Lila looked at it for a long moment. Then she took it, and he pulled her up behind him like she weighed nothing. The horse started moving, and Red Hollow fell away behind them. Lila didn't look back. Didn't need to. She'd already memorized every ugly inch of it. They rode in silence for the first hour. Lila kept her hands light on the saddle edge, careful not to touch Cole more than necessary. He didn't talk, didn't ask questions, just kept the horse moving at a steady pace that ate up the miles without wearing the animal down. The land around them was wide and empty, the kind of empty that made you feel small. Grass that went gold in the sun, low hills in the distance, sky so big it didn't seem real. By the time they stopped to rest, Lila's legs were shaking. She slid off the horse and nearly stumbled, but caught herself before Cole could offer a hand. He didn't comment, just loosened the saddle and let the horse drink from a shallow creek she hadn't even noticed. "You know this area?" Lila asked. "Well enough?" "You travel to Pharaoh's Bend often?" "Sometimes." He splashed water on his face, rubbed the back of his neck. "Got business there now and then." "What kind of business?" "Cattle, supplies, the usual." He glanced at her. "You ask a lot of questions. You're a stranger giving me a ride across dangerous country. I think I'm entitled." Cole huffed. Might have been a laugh. "Fair point." Lila sat on a flat rock and opened the tin of crackers. They tasted like dust, but she ate them anyway. Across the creek, Cole leaned against a tree and watched the horizon like he expected trouble. "You don't believe what they said about me," Lila said. Not a question. "No." "Why not?" "Because I've met plenty of liars in my time, and you're not one of them. You don't know me. Don't need to." He tipped his hat back. "I know the man who accused you, though. Garrett Moss. He's a piece of work." Lila went still. "You know him?" "Bought cattle off him once, paid in full, and he still tried to short me on the count." Cole's expression darkened. "Man like that doesn't tell the truth unless it benefits him. And running you out of town, that benefits him just fine." "How?" "Gets rid of someone who might have seen something or asked the wrong questions." Lila's heart kicked. "What are you talking about?" "Moss has been running schemes in Red Hollow for years. Land deals that don't add up. Money going places it shouldn't. Most folks are too scared to say anything because he's got the mayor in his pocket." Cole looked at her. "You taught school there. You talked to the kids. Maybe one of them said something they shouldn't have." "I never—" Lila stopped. Thought back. There'd been a boy, Samuel Finch, who'd mentioned his pa arguing with Mr. Moss about a fence line, about land that didn't belong to anyone, but somehow Moss had claimed it. She'd thought it was just normal boundary disputes, hadn't thought anything of it. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "Moss made sure of that. Easier to ruin you than risk you figuring it out." Anger flared hot in Lila's chest. "And nobody stopped him. They just let him lie, and they—" She broke off, swallowed hard. "They chose him over me." "Yeah." Cole's voice was flat. "They did. I hate them." "Can't blame you." Lila stood, paced a few steps, came back. "I hate that I believed them, that I thought if I just worked hard enough, did everything right, they'd see me as one of them. But I was never one of them. I was just convenient until I wasn't." Cole didn't say anything, didn't try to comfort her or tell her it would be okay. He just let her be angry, and somehow that helped more than sympathy would have. After a while, Lila sat back down. "Thank you for telling me. Doesn't change what happened." No, but it helps to know I'm not crazy. Cole pushed off the tree. You're not crazy. You're just unlucky. He offered her the canteen. Drink. We've got another 15 miles before sundown. They rode through the afternoon. The land shifted, subtle but real. Fewer trees, rockier ground, the air starting to carry a charge that made the horse uneasy. Lila felt it too, a pressure building behind her eyes. Storm coming? Cole said. Lila looked at the sky. Still blue, but yeah. There was something at the edges, a darkness creeping in. How far to the next town? Too far. Cole scanned the horizon. There's an old line shack about 2 miles west. We can shelter there till it blows over. And if it doesn't blow over? Then we wait it out anyway. Better than getting caught in the open. The shack was smaller than Lila expected, just 4 walls and a roof that had seen better days. But it was dry and it had a fireplace, and when the rain started, it came down hard enough that she was grateful for any cover at all. Cole tied the horse under an overhang and came inside, shaking water off his hat. Could be worse. Could it? Lila looked around. Dirt floor, one broken chair, cobwebs in every corner. Could be a rattlesnake den. Comforting. Cole grinned. Actually grinned. And it changed his whole face. Made him look younger. I try. He got a fire going while Lila unpacked what little food they had. The storm hammered the roof, wind rattling the shutters, and the temperature dropped fast. Lila wrapped her shawl tighter and sat as close to the fire as she dared. You cold? Cole asked. I'm fine. You're shivering. I said I'm fine. He sighed, shrugged out of his coat, and tossed it to her. Put it on before you freeze to death. I don't need... Lila. He said her name like he was tired. Just take the damn coat. She took it. It smelled like leather and smoke and something else she couldn't name. It was too big, the sleeves hanging past her hands, but it was warm. She pulled it tight and didn't say thank you because her throat had gone strange. They sat in silence while the storm raged. After a while, Cole spoke. What will you do? In Pharaoh's Bend. Fine work. Teaching, if they'll have me. If not, she shrugged. I'll figure it out. You got people there? No. Friends? Anyone who can vouch for you? No. Lila stared at the fire. I've got nothing. No connections, no references they'll believe. Just me and a story nobody wants to hear. So you start over. Looks like. Cole was quiet. Then, you ever think about not going to Pharaoh's Bend? Lila frowned. Where else would I go? Somewhere that's not another town full of people who'll judge you before they know you. Like where? I've got land. A ranch. It's not much, but it's mine. I could use help. Cooking, mending, general work. Pay's not great, but it's steady. And nobody out there gives a damn about your past. Lila turned to look at him. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a choice. I don't know you. You keep saying that, because it's true. But even as she said it, she was thinking. A ranch. Work that didn't depend on reputation. No more towns, no more sideways looks, no more waiting for the next Garrett Moss to decide she was in the way. Think about it, Cole said. You don't have to decide now. Outside, the storm showed no signs of stopping. Inside, the fire burned low and steady, and for the first time since she'd left Red Hollow, Lila felt something that wasn't rage or fear. It was possibility. Small, fragile, but there. She pulled Cole's coat tighter and watched the flames dance. The rain didn't stop. It kept coming through the night, relentless and cold, drumming against the roof of the line shack like it had a personal grudge. Lila dozed in fits, never quite falling all the way under, always aware of the fire crackling low and the presence of Cole Brennan on the other side of the room. He'd given her the only blanket without asking if she wanted it, just tossed it over and settled himself against the wall with his hat pulled down over his eyes. She tried to give it back. He'd ignored her. By the time dawn came, gray and reluctant, Lila's whole body ached. Her neck was stiff from sleeping half upright, and her feet throbbed in boots that had never been made for this kind of walking. She sat up slowly, wincing, and found Cole already awake. He was crouched by the fire, coaxing it back to life with fresh kindling. Morning, he said, not looking at her. Is it? Lila pushed hair out of her face. It had come loose from its pins sometime in the night and hung in a mess around her shoulders. Doesn't feel like it. Storm broke about an hour ago. Ground's going to be mud for a while, but we can move. To Pharaoh's Bend. Cole paused, then nodded. If that's still where you want to go. Lila pulled the blanket tighter. You really meant it last night, the job offer. I don't say things I don't mean. Most people do. I'm not most people. He stood, brushed off his hands. Look, I'm not trying to pressure you. You want to go to Pharaoh's Bend? I'll take you there. But if you're running towards something that's just going to be more of the same judgments, same whispers, then maybe it's worth thinking about a different direction. Lila studied him. He looked tired, lines etched deep around his eyes, but there was something steady about him, something that didn't shift or flinch when she stared too long. Why do you live alone? She asked. Why do you think? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Cole picked up his coat, the one she'd been wearing, and shook it out. Had a wife once, Sarah. She died 4 years back. Fever took her in the winter and I couldn't... He stopped, jaw tight. Couldn't do a damn thing about it. After that, the ranch felt too big and too empty at the same time. Most hired hands don't stay long, too isolated, too quiet. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's just how things are. He handed her the coat. Point is, I'm used to being alone. But that doesn't mean I like it. And I figure if I'm going to have someone around, might as well be someone who's got a brain and isn't afraid to use it. Lila pulled on the coat. It still smelled like him, and she tried not to notice. You don't know if I have a brain. You walked out of Red Hollow rather than beg people who didn't deserve it. That tells me enough. She didn't know what to say to that. So she stood, folded the blanket, and handed it back. How far is your ranch? From here? About 12 miles northwest. And Pharaoh's Bend? 18 miles east. Lila looked toward the door, where pale light was starting to seep through the gaps. 18 miles to a town that didn't know her, where she'd have to start from nothing and hope they believed her over whatever story eventually followed from Red Hollow. 12 miles to a ranch in the middle of nowhere, owned by a man she'd known for less than a day. Neither option was good, but one of them felt less like walking into another trap. If I say yes, Lila said slowly, to the ranch, I want it clear. I work for my keep. I'm not a charity case, and I'm not... She stopped, searching for the right words. I'm not someone you rescued. I'm an employee, that's all. Cole's mouth twitched. That works for me. And if I don't like it, I leave. No questions, no guilt. Fine. You agree pretty easily. Because I mean it. He picked up the saddle. Now, are we doing this, or are you going to negotiate terms all morning? Lila almost smiled. Almost. We're doing this. They rode northwest. The land changed as they went, the flat prairie giving way to rolling hills dotted with scrub oak and rocky outcrops. The mud slowed them down, the horse picking its way carefully through patches that wanted to suck at its hooves. But Cole knew the terrain. He guided them around the worst of it, and by midday they'd covered more ground than Lila had expected. They stopped at a creek to let the horse drink and rest. Lila slid off, her legs shaking, and sat heavily on a fallen log. Every muscle screamed. She wasn't built for this. Long hours on horseback, sleeping on hard ground, eating jerky that turned to leather in her mouth. Back in Red Hollow, the hardest physical work she'd done was sweeping the schoolhouse floor. You're going to be sore for a few days, Cole said, like he'd read her mind. I'm sore now. It gets worse before it gets better. Wonderful. He crouched by the water, filled the canteen. You ride much before this? Never. Never? I grew up in Philadelphia. We had carriages. Cole looked at her like she'd just admitted to being from the moon. You came all the way out here from Philadelphia and never learned to ride a horse? I came out here to teach. I didn't think I'd need to. How'd you even get to Red Hollow? Stagecoach. It took 3 weeks and I thought I was going to die. Lila pulled off her boots, winced at the blisters forming on her heels. This isn't much better. Cole stood, walked over, and looked down at her feet. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. You should have said something. What would you have done? Stopped sooner, given you time to wrap those before they got worse. He went to his saddlebag, rummaged around, and came back with a strip of clean cloth. Here. I can do it myself. I know you can, but I'm offering. Lila took the cloth. Her hands were shaking a little, from exhaustion or something else, she wasn't sure. She wrapped her feet as best she could, then pulled her boots back on. They hurt worse now, pressing against the raw spots, but at least the cloth would keep them from bleeding through. "Thank you," she said quietly. Cole just nodded. They ate in silence. Lila chewed on a piece of jerky and watched the way the sun caught on the water, turning it gold and bright. It was pretty out here, in a harsh sort of way. Nothing like Philadelphia, where everything was brick and noise and people packed so tight you couldn't breathe. Out here, the silence was huge. It pressed against her ears and made her feel small, but not in a bad way. Just different. "What's the ranch like?" she asked. "Small. House, barn, a few outbuildings. I run about 100 head of cattle, give or take. It's not fancy." "I'm not looking for fancy." "Good, because you won't find it." Cole finished his jerky, wiped his hands on his pants. "There's a garden that's gone to hell since Sarah died. If you want to fix it, that's fine. If not, that's fine too. Chickens, if you know how to deal with them. And the house needs, well, everything. Fixing, cleaning, probably a new roof eventually." "You're really selling this." He grinned. "I'm being honest. You want me to lie and say it's paradise?" "No." Lila looked at him. "I want you to tell me the truth. Always." "Then here's the truth. It's hard work, and it's lonely, and some days you'll probably wonder why you didn't just go to Pharaoh's Bend. But it's yours if you want it. No one to answer to but me, and I don't care where you came from or what people said about you. You work, I pay you. That's the deal." Lila turned that over in her mind. It sounded too simple. Nothing in her life had ever been that simple. But maybe that was the point. Maybe simple was exactly what she needed. "All right," she said. "Let's see this ranch." They reached it just before sunset. Lila saw the house first, a low structure of weathered wood with a porch that sagged a little on one side. The barn was bigger, solid-looking, with a corral attached. Beyond that, fields stretched toward the hills, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance, dark shapes against the grass. It wasn't much. Cole had been right about that. But it was something. It was real. Cole dismounted and helped her down. Her legs nearly gave out when her feet hit the ground, but she steadied herself and looked around. Up close, the place showed its wear. Fence posts leaning, shutters hanging crooked, weeds choking the path to the house. But the bones were good. You could see that if you looked past the neglect. "I know it's rough," Cole said. "It's fine." "You don't have to lie." "I'm not." Lila walked toward the house, testing the porch steps. They creaked but held. "It just needs work. Work I can do." Cole followed her inside. The front room was dim, dust floating in the last of the daylight. There was a fireplace, a table, a few chairs. A door led to what looked like a bedroom, and another to a kitchen that had seen better days. Everything was covered in a fine layer of grime, like the house had been holding its breath for years. "I'll clean out the back room for you," Cole said. "It's smaller, but it's got a window. You'll have privacy." Lila turned to him. "Where do you sleep?" "Out here, or in the barn if it's too hot." "That's not—" "It's fine, Lila. I'm used to it." She wanted to argue, but she was too tired. Her whole body felt like it was made of lead, and the thought of a bed, any bed, even a bad one, was almost enough to make her cry. "I'll start cleaning tomorrow," she said. "You'll start resting tomorrow. Cleaning can wait." "I'm not going to just sit around while you say." "Lila," Cole's voice was firm. "You walked out of Red Hollow, rode 30 miles, and slept on a dirt floor. You're dead on your feet. Rest. We'll figure out the work after." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. He was right, and she hated that he was right, but fighting him on it seemed stupid, so she nodded. Cole showed her to the back room. It was small, like he'd said, with a narrow bed and a single window that looked out toward the hills. The mattress was lumpy and smelled faintly of cedar, but when Lila sat down on it, it felt like the best thing she'd ever touched. "I'll bring you water," Cole said from the doorway. "And food, if you're hungry." "I'm too tired to be hungry." "Eat anyway. You'll feel worse if you don't." He left before she could argue. Lila pulled off her boots, peeled off the makeshift bandages on her feet, and lay back on the bed. The ceiling had cracks in it, spider-webbing out from the corners, and she traced them with her eyes while her body slowly stopped screaming. She'd done it. Left Red Hollow, survived the journey, made a choice that might have been reckless, but felt right in a way nothing had in months. And now she was here, in a falling-apart ranch in the middle of nowhere, working for a man she barely knew. It should have terrified her. Maybe it did, a little. But mostly, she just felt tired. Cole came back with a plate of bread and cheese and a cup of water. He set them on the small table by the bed and stepped back. "Thank you," Lila said. "You keep saying that." "Because I mean it." He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he nodded and left, pulling the door shut behind him. Lila ate the bread. It was dry and a little stale, but she finished it anyway, then drank the water and lay back down. Outside, she could hear the wind moving through the grass, the distant lowing of cattle, the creak of the house settling. It was quiet, but not empty. There was life here, even if it was rough around the edges. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her. The next few days blurred together. Lila woke the first morning to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. She dressed slowly, every movement stiff and painful, and limped out to find Cole at the stove, frying eggs in a pan that had seen better days. "You're up," he said. "Barely. Coffee's on the table. Eggs will be ready in a minute." Lila poured herself the cup and sat down. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint, but it was hot, and it woke her up. She watched Cole work, the easy efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, and felt something strange settle in her chest. Not quite comfort, not quite belonging, but close. "Sleep all right?" Cole asked. "Better than I have in weeks." "Good." He slid eggs onto 2 plates, brought them over. "We'll take it slow today. I've got work to do with the cattle, but you can stay here. Rest, look around, whatever you need. I want to help. You can help by not collapsing." Cole sat down across from her. "I'm serious, Lila. You push too hard right now. You'll hurt yourself worse." "I'm fine." "You're limping." "That'll pass." He gave her a look, exasperated but not unkind. "Why are you so damn stubborn?" "Because if I'm not, people walk all over me." Cole paused, fork halfway to his mouth. Then he set it down. "I'm not people. I'm not trying to walk over you. I'm trying to keep you from breaking yourself before you even get started." Lila stared at her plate. "I don't know how to just sit. I need to be useful." "You are useful, but useful doesn't mean running yourself into the ground." He picked up his fork again. "Tell you what, you want to help? Start with something small. The garden's a mess. If you feel up to it, poke around out there. See what's salvageable. But if your feet start hurting, you stop. Deal?" It wasn't what she wanted, but it was something. Deal. After breakfast, Lila made her way outside. The garden was behind the house, a square plot enclosed by a low fence that had gaps where the wood had rotted through. Inside, weeds had taken over, choking out whatever had been planted there before. But she could see the remnants: tomato stakes, bean trellises, the shape of old rows. She knelt in the dirt, careful of her feet, and started pulling weeds. It was slow work, her hands clumsy at first, but after a while she found a rhythm. The sun was warm on her back, and the smell of earth and green things filled her nose. It reminded her of the small garden her mother had kept when Lila was young, before the city swallowed them whole. By midday, she'd cleared a corner of the plot. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She sat back, wiping sweat from her forehead, and looked at what she'd done. Dirt under her nails, blisters forming on her palms, muscles aching in new places. But it felt good. Real. Cole found her there an hour later. He was covered in dust, his shirt sticking to his back, and he looked at the cleared section of garden with something like approval. "You've been busy," he said. "I told you I wanted to help. How are your feet?" "Sore." "Then you're done for today." Lila started to argue, then saw the look on his face and stopped. "Fine." "Good." He offered her a hand up. She took it, and his grip was warm and solid. "Come on, I'll show you the rest of the place." He walked her around the ranch, pointing out the barn where he kept tools and feed, the chicken coop that needed new wire, the well that sometimes ran dry in summer. He talked about the cattle, the grazing patterns, the predators that came down from the hills in winter. Lila listened, filing it all away, trying to build a picture of how this place worked. "It's a lot," she said finally. "Yeah." "You do all this yourself?" "Mostly. Hire help during roundup, but otherwise it's just me." Lila looked at him. "That sounds exhausting." "It is. Cole leaned against the fence, watching the cattle. But it's mine. Nobody tells me what to do or how to do it. And out here, nobody cares who I used to be or what mistakes I made. They just care if the work gets done. Is that why you stayed, after your wife died? He was quiet for a long time. Then, partly. Partly because I didn't know where else to go. This was our place, Sarah's and mine. Leaving felt like giving up on her. You're not giving up on her by living. I know. Took me a while to figure that out, though. Lila watched the way the light moved across the hills, painting everything gold and shadow. I'm sorry she's gone. Me too. Cole pushed off the fence. But I figure she'd be glad I'm not doing this alone anymore. She always said the place felt too quiet. And now you've got me. And now I've got you. He looked at her, something almost like a smile on his face. Who knows? Maybe you'll stick around. Maybe. That night, Lila cooked, or tried to. The stove was temperamental, the pans were a disaster, and she burned the biscuits so badly they were basically charcoal. But Cole ate them anyway, scraping off the worst of the black parts and pretending it was fine. You don't have to lie, Lila said. I'm not lying. They're not that bad. They're terrible. All right, yeah, they're pretty terrible. He grinned. But you'll get better. How do you know? Because you're stubborn. You'll keep at it until you figure it out. Lila threw a dish towel at him. He caught it, laughing, and for a second the kitchen felt warm and full and nothing like the cold silence of Red Hollow. The days turned into a week, then two. Lila settled into a rhythm. She woke with the sun, helped Cole with the morning chores, spent the afternoons working on the garden, or cleaning the house, or mending clothes that had gone too long without repair. Her hands toughened, her feet healed, and her body stopped aching every time she moved. Cole paid her at the end of the second week, counting out bills and coins onto the kitchen table. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Earned, not given out of pity or obligation. Thank you, she said. You earned it. Still, he shrugged. I'm not doing you a favor, Lila. You work harder than most hired hands I've had. You're worth the pay. She didn't know what to say to that. So she folded the money carefully and tucked it into her pocket. That night, she sat on the porch and watched the stars. They were brighter out here, away from town lights, scattered across the sky like someone had spilled salt. Cole came out after a while and sat beside her, not saying anything, just being there. I keep waiting for it to feel wrong, Lila said quietly. Being here. But it doesn't. Is that bad? I don't know. Maybe I should feel guilty. For leaving. For not fighting harder. You did fight. They just didn't let you win. Cole leaned back against the post. And you don't owe Red Hollow anything. Not your guilt, not your regret. They made their choice. You made yours. Do you think I made the right one? Do you? Lila thought about it. About the schoolhouse she'd loved, the children she'd taught, the life she'd thought she was building. Then she thought about the quiet of the ranch, the work that left her tired but satisfied, the way Cole never looked at her like she needed to prove herself. Yeah, she said finally. I think I did. Cole didn't answer, just nodded, and they sat there together while the night deepened around them. 3 weeks in, a rider came up the road. Lila saw him from the garden, a dark figure against the horizon, and her stomach clenched. Visitors meant questions. Questions meant explanations, and she wasn't ready for that. She went to find Cole. He was in the barn fixing a broken bridle, and he looked up when she came in. Someone's coming, Lila said. Cole set down the bridle. You recognize them? No. He walked past her, out into the yard, and Lila followed. The rider was closer now, and she could see it was a man, older, with a star pinned to his vest. A lawman. Cole's expression didn't change, but his shoulders tensed. Sheriff Carver, what brings you out here? The sheriff dismounted, slow and stiff. Cole, been a while. Not long enough. Carver's eyes flicked to Lila, then back to Cole. I'm here about the woman, Lila Hartley. Heard she might be with you. Lila's heart kicked hard. Who told you that? Folks in Red Hollow. They're looking for her. Why? Cole's voice was flat, hard. Because there's been a development. Carver pulled a folded paper from his coat. Garrett Moss confessed, said he made the whole thing up. The world tilted. Lila heard the words, but they didn't make sense. What? He confessed 2 days ago. Broke down in front of the mayor and said he lied about you. Said he wanted you gone because you were asking too many questions about his land deals. Carver handed the paper to Cole. The town council sent a formal apology. They want you to come back. Lila stared at the paper in Cole's hands. An apology. They wanted her back. After everything they'd done, everything they'd believed, they wanted her back like it was that simple. No, she said. Carver blinked. Ma'am? I said no. Lila stepped forward. They drove me out. They called me a liar. They stood there and watched me leave and didn't say a word, and now they want me back because it's convenient? Miss Hartley, I understand you're upset. Upset? Lila laughed, sharp and bitter. I'm not upset. I'm furious and I'm done. Cole was watching her, steady and quiet. He didn't say anything, didn't try to calm her down or talk her into going back. He just stood there, and somehow that helped more than anything. Carver shifted his weight. They're willing to pay you for the time you lost. Reinstate your position. I don't want their money. I don't want their position. Lila looked him square in the eye. Tell them I'm not coming back. Tell them I've got a new job and they can take their apology and... She stopped herself, took a breath. Just tell them no. The sheriff looked at Cole. You sure about this? It's not my decision, Cole said. It's hers. Carver sighed, put the paper back in his coat. All right, I'll let them know. He mounted his horse, looked down at Lila. For what it's worth, I think you got a raw deal. And I'm glad Moss confessed. But if you change your mind, I won't. He nodded and rode off. Lila watched him go, her hands clenched into fists, her whole body shaking. When he was out of sight, Cole spoke. You all right? All. No. Lila turned to him. I thought, when he said Moss confessed, I thought I'd feel vindicated. But I just feel angry. You should be angry. They want me back like nothing happened, like they didn't ruin me. They can't ruin you. Cole's voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. They tried, but you're still standing. Lila's throat tightened. I don't want to go back. Then don't. Just like that? Just like that. He stepped closer. You've got a place here, Lila, for as long as you want it. And if you decide tomorrow you want to leave, that's fine too. But don't go back to them out of guilt or obligation or because you think you owe them something. You don't. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth in his eyes. He meant it, every word. Thank you, she whispered. Stop thanking me. I mean it. I know. He reached out, hesitated, then put a hand on her shoulder, just for a second. Come on, let's get back to work. And they did. The garden, the house, the endless tasks that made up life on the ranch. But something had shifted. Lila had been given a choice. Go back to what she knew, or stay in the uncertain new thing she was building. And she'd chosen to stay. That night she sat at the kitchen table and wrote a letter. Not to the people of Red Hollow. They didn't deserve her words. But to herself. A promise that she wouldn't forget what they'd done, but she also wouldn't let it define her. When she was done, she folded it and tucked it away. Then she went outside and stood under the stars, breathing in the cool night air, and felt something like peace settle over her. She was home. The letter sat in Lila's drawer for 3 days before she stopped thinking about it every hour. She'd written it in a moment of clarity, but clarity had a way of fading when you were elbow-deep in dishwater or pulling weeds in the garden under a sun that didn't care how you felt. The anger stayed, though. It lived in her chest like a banked fire, not burning hot anymore, but not gone either, just waiting. Cole didn't ask about the letter. Didn't ask if she'd changed her mind about Red Hollow. He just kept working, kept the ranch running, kept treating her like she belonged there. It should have made things easier, but it didn't. Because the more time Lila spent at the ranch, the more she realized she didn't know how to just be somewhere without waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was early June when the real storm came. Not the kind that brought rain, though that would have been easier. This one came with wind that screamed across the prairie and clouds that looked bruised and swollen. Lila saw it building from the garden, the sky turning a sickly yellow-green that made her stomach clench. She found Cole in the barn, checking the latch on the hayloft. That doesn't look good, she said, pointing toward the horizon. Cole followed her gaze and swore under his breath. No, it doesn't. What do we do? Get the cattle into the lower pasture. They'll be safer there if it turns bad. He grabbed a coil of rope from the wall. Then we batten down everything that can blow away and hope we don't lose the roof. How bad can it get? Bad enough. He headed for the door, then stopped and looked back at her. Stay in the house once the wind picks up. Don't try to help outside. I mean it, Lila. I'm not helpless. I know. But a tornado doesn't care how capable you are. The word hit her like cold water. Tornado. She'd heard stories about them back east, but they'd always seemed distant and unreal. Now looking at that bruised sky, they felt very real. Go, Cole said, softer this time. I'll handle the cattle. You secure the house. Lila wanted to argue, but the look on his face stopped her. So she nodded and ran back to the house while Cole headed toward the pasture, moving fast but not panicked. Like this was just another thing to survive. Inside, Lila went from room to room, closing shutters and latching windows. Her hands shook a little, and she hated that they did. She'd walked 30 miles across open country, faced down a town that wanted her gone, rebuilt her life from nothing. But the sky outside looked like the end of the world, and fear didn't care about what you'd already survived. The wind hit just as she finished with the last window. It came all at once, slamming against the walls hard enough to make the whole house shudder. Lila grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself and listened to the roar outside. It sounded alive. Hungry. Cole came through the door 5 minutes later, soaked despite the fact that it hadn't started raining yet. The wind had kicked up dust and debris, coating him in a fine layer of grit. He shook it off and looked around the room. Good, he said. Everything's locked down? Yes. Cellar's out back. If this gets worse, that's where we go. How will we know if it gets worse? You'll know. He moved to the window, peered through the slats in the shutters. Wind's coming from the southwest. That's not great. What does that mean? Means it's rotating. Could drop a funnel anywhere in the next hour. Lila's chest tightened. And if it does? Then we get underground and pray it misses us. Cole turned away from the window. You ever been in a storm like this? No. It's loud. Sounds like a freight train. If you hear that, you run for the cellar and you don't stop for anything. Not clothes, not papers, nothing. You understand? I understand. He nodded, but his jaw was tight. The easy confidence he usually carried had worn thin, replaced by something sharper. Worry, maybe. Or just the knowledge that some things couldn't be controlled no matter how hard you worked. They waited. The wind built, howling around the corners of the house and rattling the shutters like it wanted in. Rain started hard and sideways, drumming against the walls and sheets. Lightning cracked close enough to turn the room white for a split second, and the thunder that followed shook the floor. Lila sat at the table, gripping the edge so hard her knuckles went white. Cole paced, checking the windows, the door, the ceiling for leaks. Every few minutes he'd glance at her, and she'd nod to show she was fine even though she wasn't. Talk to me, Cole said suddenly. Lila looked up. What? Talk, tell me something, anything. Why? Because sitting in silence waiting for the sky to fall is making me crazy, and I figure it's doing the same to you. She almost laughed. What do you want me to talk about? I don't know. Philadelphia. Why you left? Lila hesitated. She didn't talk about Philadelphia, didn't like thinking about it. But the storm was screaming outside, and maybe Cole was right. Maybe talking was better than sitting here waiting for the roof to peel off. My father died when I was 15, she said. Cholera. My mother tried to keep things going, but we didn't have much. She took in sewing, and I worked as a governess for a family uptown. But it wasn't enough. By the time I was 20, she was sick too. Different kind of sick, something in her lungs. The doctor said it was the air, all the coal smoke and factory soot. Said she needed clean air and rest. So you came west. Not right away. She died 6 months before I left. And after that, there was nothing keeping me there. No family, no prospects. Just a city that felt like it was choking me. Lila traced a crack in the table with her finger. I saw an advertisement for teachers in frontier towns. Good pay, they said. A chance to make a difference. It sounded better than staying in a place that reminded me of everything I'd lost. Cole stopped pacing. I'm sorry. About your mother. Don't be. She's not suffering anymore. Still. The wind screamed louder, and something heavy slammed against the side of the house. Lila flinched. Cole moved to the window again, looked out, then went very still. "What?" Lila asked. "What is it?" "Funnel." His voice was flat. "Southwest, maybe half a mile out." Lila stood so fast her chair scraped back. "We need to go." "Not yet. It's not moving toward us." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen enough of these to tell." But his hand was on the door latch, ready. "If it shifts, we go. But right now we're safer here than running through that." Lila crossed to the window, peered through the gap in the shutters. At first she didn't see anything, just rain and darkness. Then lightning lit the sky, and she saw it. A thin black rope hanging from the clouds, twisting and writhing like something alive. Her breath caught. I know." Cole's hand closed around her wrist, gentle but firm, pulling her back from the window. "Don't stare at it. Just watch and tell me if it changes direction." They stood there side by side, watching that terrible rope dance across the prairie. It moved slowly, almost lazy, tearing up dirt and grass and everything in its path. Lila could hear it now, that freight train roar Cole had talked about, low and grinding and inhuman. "It's turning," she said. Cole swore. "East or west?" "East, toward—" She stopped, toward them. "Cellar, now." He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back door. The wind nearly ripped it out of his grasp when he opened it, and the rain hit them like fists. Lila stumbled, but Cole caught her, his arm around her waist, half dragging her across the yard toward the cellar doors set into the ground. He yanked one open, shoved her toward the steps. "Go!" Lila went, her feet slipping on wet wood. The cellar was dark and smelled like earth and rot, but she didn't care. She hit the bottom and turned just as Cole came down after her, slamming the door shut above them. The latch dropped with a heavy thunk, and then there was only darkness and the muffled roar of the storm. Cole struck a match. The flame wavered, casting wild shadows, but it was enough to see by. He found a lantern on a shelf, lit it, and the cellar took shape around them. Narrow, dirt-walled shelves lined with jars and crates. A space meant for storage, not living, but it was solid. Safe. Lila sank onto a crate, shaking. Her dress was soaked through, her hair plastered to her face, and she couldn't stop her teeth from chattering. "Here." Cole shrugged out of his coat, still wet, but less so, and draped it over her shoulders. "You're going into shock." "I'm fine." "You're shaking like a leaf." "So are you." He looked down at his hands. She was right. He flexed his fingers, then sat on a crate across from her. "Yeah, well, that was closer than I'd like." Above them, the roar intensified. The cellar door rattled in its frame, and dust sifted down from the ceiling. Lila looked up, half expecting the whole thing to collapse on them, but it held. Cole reached across the space between them and took her hand. "It's going to be fine," he said. "You don't know that." "No, but I'm saying it anyway." Lila laughed, sharp and edged with hysteria. "That's stupid." "Probably." He squeezed her hand. "But it's all I've got." The roar peaked, so loud it felt like the world was ending. Then, slowly, it started to fade. The wind eased, the rattling stopped, and the only sound left was rain drumming against the cellar doors. They sat there for a long time, neither of them letting go. Lila's heart was still racing, her breath coming too fast, but Cole's hand was warm and steady, and she focused on that. On the fact that they were alive, that the storm hadn't taken them. Finally, Cole stood and moved to the doors. He pushed one open carefully, and pale light spilled in. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the sky was lighter, the bruised yellow-green giving way to gray. "Come on," he said. "Let's see what's left." They climbed out into a world that looked like it had been rearranged by an angry hand. The barn was still standing, but part of the roof was gone. Shingles scattered across the yard like playing cards. The chicken coop was flattened, wire and wood twisted into shapes that didn't make sense. And the garden. Lila's chest tightened when she saw it. Half the fence was gone, posts ripped clean out of the ground, and the rows she'd spent weeks clearing were churned into mud. "Could have been worse," Cole said quietly. "How?" "House is still here. We're still here." He walked toward the barn, stepping over debris. "Cattle?" Lila followed him. The lower pasture was a mess, but she could see dark shapes moving in the distance. "I think they're okay." Cole nodded, but his face was tight. "We've got work to do." They spent the rest of the day cleaning up. Lila salvaged what she could from the garden, her hands shaking with exhaustion and something deeper. Grief, maybe. For the work she'd put in, the progress she'd made. It felt stupid to mourn a garden when they'd almost died, but she couldn't help it. Cole worked on the barn, pulling down the damaged sections of roof so they wouldn't collapse on their own. He didn't talk much, just moved with that same steady determination, and Lila found herself watching him when she thought he wouldn't notice. The way he didn't stop, didn't complain, just dealt with what was in front of him. By sunset, they'd made a dent. Not much of one, but enough. The yard was still a disaster. The barn was still half wrecked, but the immediate dangers were gone. They could breathe. Lila stood in the middle of the yard, covered in mud and utterly spent, and looked at the house. It was still standing. They were still standing. "You did good today," Cole said, coming up beside her. "I didn't do anything." "You didn't fall apart, that's something." Lila turned to look at him. His face was haggard, streaked with dirt, and there was a cut on his forehead she hadn't noticed before. "You're bleeding." "Am I?" He touched his forehead, looked at his fingers. "Huh. Must have caught a piece of shingle. Let me clean it." "It's fine." "Cole." He sighed. "All right." Inside, Lila heated water and found a clean cloth. Cole sat at the table, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him, and let her dab at the cut. It wasn't deep, but it was long, running from his hairline to his temple. "This is going to scar," Lila said. "Add it to the collection." She paused. "You have a collection?" "Everyone does if they live long enough." He closed his eyes, leaned into her touch just slightly. "Thanks." "For what?" Not panicking, not making it harder than it had to be. Lila set down the cloth. "You think I would have?" "I don't know. Some people do." "I'm not some people." Cole opened his eyes, looked at her. "No, you're not." Something passed between them in that moment. Not words, not anything she could name, just a recognition. That they'd survived something together, and it meant something. Maybe more than either of them was ready to admit. Lila stepped back, suddenly self-conscious. "I should make dinner. I'll help." "You're exhausted." "So are you." They made a meal together out of what little they had. Beans, stale bread, coffee that was more grounds than water. It tasted like nothing, but they ate it anyway, too tired to care. After, they sat on the porch. The sky had cleared and stars were starting to appear, bright and indifferent. Lila pulled her knees to her chest and stared out at the wreckage of the yard. "I keep thinking about Red Hollow," she said quietly. Cole glanced at her. "What about it?" "About how easy it was for them to believe the worst of me. How fast they turned." She rested her chin on her knees. "And then I think about today, about how you didn't leave me in that cellar alone. How you could have, but you didn't. Why would I leave you?" "I don't know, but most people would have saved themselves first." Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'm not most people." "No," Lila agreed. "You're not." They sat in silence, and Lila felt something shift inside her. Not love, she wasn't ready to call it that, didn't even know if she believed in it anymore. But trust, the kind that came from seeing someone in the worst moments and knowing they wouldn't let you fall. The next week was brutal. They worked from sunup to sundown, repairing what they could and salvaging the rest. The barn roof took 3 days to patch, and even then it leaked when the rain came. The garden was a lost cause, and Lila had to start over, replanting seeds and hoping they'd take before the season ran out. But something had changed between her and Cole. They talked more. Not about anything heavy, just small things. Stories from before, plans for the ranch, arguments about whether the chickens needed a new coop or if they could make do with repairs. It felt easy in a way nothing in Lila's life had felt easy in years. One evening, Cole came in from the fields earlier than usual. Lila was at the stove, trying to figure out how to make beans not taste like punishment, and she looked up when he walked in. "You're back early," she said. Finished the fence line. He poured himself water, drank it in one long pull. "Figured I'd see if you needed help." "With cooking?" "With anything," Lila laughed. "You hate cooking. Doesn't mean I can't try." He came to stand beside her, looking into the pot like it held the secrets of the universe. Lila handed him a spoon. "Stir this while I cut the bread?" "I can do that." They worked side by side, not talking, just moving around each other in the small space. At one point, Cole reached past her for the salt, and his arm brushed hers. Neither of them moved away. Dinner was better than usual, though that wasn't saying much. They ate at the table, and Cole told her about a section of fence that had been knocked down by a tree during the storm. Lila told him about finding a nest of baby rabbits in the garden and relocating them so they wouldn't get trampled. "You're getting soft," Cole said, but he was smiling. "I'm practical. Can't grow anything if the rabbits eat it first." Uh-huh. After dinner, Lila washed the dishes while Cole sat at the table, mending a bridle. The lantern light was warm, the night outside quiet except for the chirp of crickets. It felt domestic. Normal. Like this was a life they'd built on purpose instead of stumbling into by accident. "Lila," Cole said, not looking up from the bridle. "Yeah?" "I'm glad you stayed." She turned, hands dripping soapy water. "What?" "After the sheriff came. I'm glad you didn't go back to Red Hollow." Lila set down the dish she was holding. "Why?" Cole finally looked at her. "Because this place is better with you in it." Her throat tightened. "Cole, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know that it matters, that you're here." Lila didn't know what to say, so she crossed the room, sat down across from him, and took the bridle out of his hands. "It matters to me too," she said quietly. "Being here. With you." Cole's expression softened. "Yeah?" "Yeah." They looked at each other, and Lila felt something in her chest crack open. Not break, just open. Letting in light she hadn't realized she'd been blocking. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said. "With any of this. I don't know how to—" She gestured vaguely. "Be here without waiting for it to fall apart." "You think I do?" Cole leaned back in his chair. "I've been alone for 4 years. I don't know how to let someone in either." "Then we're both terrible at this." "Guess so." Lila laughed, and it felt good, real. "What do we do?" "I don't know. Figure it out as we go?" "That sounds like a bad plan." "You got a better one?" She didn't. So she nodded, and Cole reached across the table, his hand open. Lila took it, and his fingers closed around hers, warm and rough and steady. They sat like that for a long time, not saying anything, just holding on. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through the grass, and Lila thought about storms, about how they came and tore things apart, but also how they left space for new things to grow. Maybe that's what this was. Not the end of something, but the beginning. Messy and uncertain, and nothing like she'd planned. But hers. And for the first time in months, that felt like enough. The morning after they'd sat holding hands across the kitchen table, Lila woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Cole moving around in the other room. She lay there for a moment, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, and tried to figure out what she was feeling. It wasn't quite fear, though there was some of that. Wasn't quite hope either. More like standing at the edge of something and not knowing if the ground on the other side was solid. She got up, dressed, and went to find him. He was at the stove frying eggs in the battered pan, and he looked up when she came in. "Morning," he said. "Morning." They looked at each other, and Lila waited for it to feel awkward, for last night to hang between them like something that needed explaining. But Cole just turned back to the eggs, and she poured herself coffee, and it felt normal. Easy. "Sleep all right?" he asked. "Better than usual." "Good." He slid eggs onto 2 plates. "We've got supplies to pick up in town today. Nails, wire, some other things. You want to come?" Lila hesitated. Town meant people, questions, the possibility of running into someone who knew her story. "Which town?" "Pharaoh's Bend. It's the closest, and they don't care much about other people's business." "You sure about that?" "Sure enough." Cole set the plates on the table. "But if you don't want to go, I understand." Lila thought about it. She could stay here, hide on the ranch, avoid the world indefinitely. Or she could go into town, face whatever came, and stop letting fear make her decisions. "I'll go," she said. Cole nodded like he'd expected that answer. "We'll leave after breakfast." They rode into Pharaoh's Bend just after noon. The town was bigger than Red Hollow, sprawling and unplanned, with buildings that looked like they'd been thrown up in a hurry and left to fend for themselves. But it was busy. People moving in and out of shops, wagons rattling down the main street. the sound of hammers and voices filling the air. Cole tied the horse outside the general store and helped Lila down. Her legs were steadier now, months of ranch work having toughened her up, but she still felt out of place in her worn dress and sun-darkened skin. Back in Philadelphia, she would have looked like a field hand. Here, she just looked like everyone else. "I need to talk to the smithy about some tools," Cole said. "You all right picking up the supplies?" "I can manage. I'll meet you back here in an hour." He walked off, and Lila watched him go before turning toward the store. The bell over the door jangled when she walked in, and the man behind the counter looked up. He was older, with a face like worn leather and eyes that took her in without judgment. "Help you, miss?" he asked. Lila handed him the list Cole had written out. "I need these." The man scanned it, nodded, and started pulling items off the shelves. Nails, wire, a new saw blade, coffee, flour, sugar. He worked efficiently, stacking everything on the counter, and Lila watched him tally the cost in a ledger. "That'll be $8.40, he said. Lila counted out the money. Cole had given it to her before they'd split up, and handed it over. The man took it, made change, and started wrapping the supplies in brown paper. "You new around here?" he asked, not looking up. "I work at the Brennan ranch." "Cole's place." The man nodded. "Good man, Cole. Keeps to himself, but he's fair." "He is." The man tied off the last package and pushed it across the counter. "You tell him Bill says hello." "I will." Lila gathered the supplies and walked back outside. The street was even busier now, and she had to navigate around a wagon unloading barrels. She was halfway to where Cole had tied the horse when she heard a voice behind her. "Lila Hartley?" She froze. Turned. A woman stood a few feet away, younger than Lila, with a round face and curious eyes. It took a second, but then Lila recognized her. Emma Price. She'd been one of the older girls in Red Hollow, 17 or 18, always hanging around the edges of the schoolyard trying to look grown. "Emma," Lila said carefully. "I thought that was you." Emma came closer, smiling. "What are you doing here? I thought you'd gone east." "No, I'm working at a ranch nearby." "Really?" Emma's smile widened. "That's wonderful. After everything that happened, I'm so glad you landed on your feet." Lila's hands tightened on the packages. "What do you mean, everything that happened?" Emma's smile faltered. "With Mr. Moss, the lies. It was awful what they did to you." "You knew they were lies?" "Well, not at first, but after he confessed, everyone felt terrible. The mayor sent someone to find you, but they said you didn't want to come back." "I didn't. I don't blame you." Emma lowered her voice. "Honestly, I thought it was brave, walking away like that. Most women would have come crawling back just to prove a point." Lila stared at her. "You think I left to prove a point? Didn't you?" "I left because they drove me out, because nobody stood up for me when it mattered." Lila's voice was rising, and she forced it down. "And now you're telling me everyone feels terrible? That's supposed to make it better?" Emma took a step back, startled. "I didn't mean—" "What did you mean, Emma?" I'm glad you're okay. That's all." Lila wanted to yell, wanted to tell Emma that okay was a long way from where she'd been 3 months ago, that feeling terrible didn't undo what had been done. But Emma was just a girl, barely more than a child, and taking her anger out on her wouldn't change anything. "I have to go," Lila said. "Wait, will you come back to Red Hollow? People would love to see you." "No." Lila turned away. "Tell them I'm fine where I am." She walked back to the horse and loaded the supplies into the saddlebags, her hands shaking. Emma didn't follow, but Lila could feel her watching, could feel the weight of her confusion, her good intentions, her complete inability to understand why Lila didn't want their apologies. Cole found her a few minutes later. He took one look at her face and frowned. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Lila, I ran into someone from Red Hollow. It's fine." Cole didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. He just checked the saddlebags, swung up onto the horse, and pulled her up behind him. They rode out of town in silence, and Lila pressed her face against his back, trying to breathe through the tightness in her chest. By the time they reached the ranch, she'd gotten herself under control. Mostly. She slid off the horse and started unloading supplies, and Cole let her work without commenting. But when she reached for the bag of nails and it slipped through her fingers, scattering across the ground, she just stood there staring at them. "Leave it," Cole said quietly. "I can—" "Lila, leave it." She looked at him, and whatever he saw in her face made him step closer. "Come on, let's go inside." They left the nails where they'd fallen. Inside, Cole poured her water and made her sit at the table. She drank it in small sips, not tasting it, just trying to get her breathing steady. "You want to tell me what happened?" Cole asked. "It was stupid." "Doesn't sound stupid." Lila set down the cup. She said everyone in Red Hollow feels terrible. Like that matters. Like feeling bad undoes what they did. It doesn't. I know that. But she looked at me like I was being unreasonable for not forgiving them. Like I should just move on. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then, "You don't owe them forgiveness." "I know." "Do you? Because it sounds like you're trying to convince yourself." Lila looked at him. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you keep carrying this around, the anger, the hurt. And I get it, they deserve your anger, but at some point you have to decide if holding on to it is helping you or just making you bleed." "So I should forgive them." "No, I'm saying you should let yourself stop thinking about them. They don't get to live in your head rent-free for the rest of your life." Lila's throat tightened. "I don't know how to do that." "Neither do I, but we can figure it out." The way he said "we," like it was automatic, like her problems were his problems, made something crack in Lila's chest. She reached across the table, and Cole took her hand, his grip warm and solid. "I'm tired of being angry," she said quietly. "Then stop." "It's not that simple." "No, but it's a start." They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just holding on. And slowly the tightness in Lila's chest eased. Not gone, but looser. Enough to breathe. The days after that were good. Better than good. Lila threw herself into the work, rebuilding the garden, fixing the chicken coop, helping Cole with the cattle. And when the work was done, they'd sit on the porch and watch the sunset, talking about nothing and everything. Small things, big things, things that mattered and things that didn't. One evening, Cole asked her what she missed most about teaching. Lila thought about it. The kids. Not all of them. Some were terrors. But the ones who wanted to learn, who looked at me like I had answers. "You do have answers." "Not always." "Nobody does. But you're good at making people think." Cole leaned back in his chair. "You ever think about teaching again?" "Where?" "The nearest town is 18 miles away, and I'm not going back to Red Hollow." "I didn't mean in a town." Lila frowned. "Then where?" "Here. There are ranches scattered all over this area. Families with kids who don't have access to a school because they're too far out. You could teach them." "How? Go door to door?" "No, bring them here. Set up a schoolroom in one of the outbuildings. Once a week, twice a week. Whatever works." Lila stared at him. "You're serious?" "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because it's a lot of work. And money. And you're good at it. And those kids need someone who gives a damn." Cole looked at her. "You don't have to decide now. But think about it." Lila did think about it. For days, she turned the idea over in her mind, looking at it from every angle. It was risky. It would take effort, resources, time. But the more she thought about it, the more it felt right. Like a piece of herself she'd thought was lost, clicking back into place. 2 weeks later, she told Cole she wanted to do it. "You sure?" he asked. "I'm sure." "All right, then let's make it happen." They spent the next month turning the old storage shed into a schoolroom. It was slow, hard work, clearing out junk, patching the roof, building desks and benches from scrap wood. But Cole worked alongside her, never complaining, and slowly the space took shape. When it was done, Lila stood in the doorway and looked at what they'd built. It wasn't much. The desks were rough, the floor was uneven, and the walls needed paint. But it was hers. A place where she could teach without fear, without judgment, without waiting for someone to decide she didn't belong. "It's perfect," she said. Cole came to stand beside her. "It's a start. How do we find students?" "I'll spread the word. Talk to the ranchers I know. They'll tell others. And if nobody comes?" "Then we tried. That's more than most people do." Lila looked at him, and something in her chest swelled. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you deserve it, and because I want to see you happy." I am happy. I know. Cole smiled and it changed his whole face. That's why I'm doing it. The first student showed up 3 weeks later. A boy named Tom, maybe 9 or 10, brought by his mother on horseback. The woman was wary, skeptical, but she handed Tom over with instructions to behave and rode off before Lila could ask her name. Tom sat at one of the desks, staring at Lila like she might bite. You ever been to school before? Lila asked. Tom shook his head. Can you read? Another shake. All right, we'll start with letters. By the end of the first lesson, Tom was tracing letters in the dirt with a stick, his tongue poking out in concentration. When his mother came to pick him up, he showed her what he'd learned, and the woman's face softened. He can come back? She asked. Every week, Lila said. If he wants to. Tom nodded so hard Lila thought his head might fall off. The next week, Tom brought a friend. The week after that, 2 more kids showed up. By the end of the month, Lila had 6 students, ranging from 7 to 13, and the little schoolroom felt alive in a way nothing had since Red Hollow. Cole watched from a distance, never interfering, but always there. Fixing a broken bench, bringing water when the kids got thirsty, making sure Lila had everything she needed. And at night, when the kids were gone and the work was done, he'd sit with her on the porch and listen to her talk about the lessons, the progress, the small victories. You're good at this, he said one evening. It's what I was meant to do. I know. He looked at her, something unspoken in his eyes. I'm glad you found your way back to it. Lila reached for his hand. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. Maybe. But it wouldn't have felt the same. They sat in comfortable silence, and Lila realized something. She wasn't just happy here. She was home. Not in the way she'd been home in Philadelphia, where home was just a place you lived. This was different, deeper. Home was Cole's steady presence, the sound of children's laughter in the schoolroom, the hard-won satisfaction of a day's work. Home was choosing to stay, choosing to build, choosing to let herself be known. That night, as Lila was getting ready for bed, Cole knocked on her door. Come in, she said. He opened the door but didn't step inside. I just wanted to say, what you're doing with the school, it's something special. And I'm proud of you. Lila's throat tightened. Thank you. And I wanted to ask. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. This is going to sound stupid. Try me. Would you want to make this permanent? Not just the school, us. Living here, working together, being... He stopped again, frustrated. I'm not good at this. Lila crossed the room, stood in front of him. Are you asking me to stay? For good? Yeah, I guess I am. And what does that look like? I don't know. Whatever you want it to look like. Partners, friends, more than that if... He broke off. I'm messing this up. No. Lila put a hand on his chest, felt his heart racing under her palm. You're not. Cole covered her hand with his. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few months, but I can't imagine this place without you anymore. And I don't want to. Lila looked up at him, at the uncertainty in his eyes, and felt something settle into place. This wasn't about Red Hollow or Philadelphia or anything that had come before. This was about now, about choosing the life she wanted instead of the one that had been chosen for her. I want to stay, she said, not because I don't have anywhere else to go, but because this is where I want to be. You're sure? I'm sure. Cole's expression softened, and he leaned down, resting his forehead against hers. Okay. Okay. They stood like that for a long moment, just breathing together. Then Cole pulled back, smiled, and said, Get some sleep. We've got work tomorrow. Always work. Always. He left, pulling the door shut behind him, and Lila sat on the edge of her bed, her heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. She'd walked out of Red Hollow with nothing, no job, no reputation, no future, and now she had a home, a purpose, and someone who saw her for who she really was. It wasn't perfect. The ranch was still falling apart in places. The school was barely more than a shed, and she and Cole were still figuring out what they were to each other. But it was real. It was hers. And that was enough. The next morning, Lila woke to find Cole already up, working on a new project. He'd started building an addition to the schoolroom, a small space where she could store books and supplies. Maybe even sleep if she wanted to be closer to the school. You didn't have to do this, she said, watching him measure boards. I know, but I wanted to. Why? Cole looked up, hammer in hand. Because you're building something here, and I want to help. Lila's chest tightened. Cole, I mean it, Lila. Whatever you need, I'm here. She crossed the yard, took the hammer from his hands, and kissed him. It was brief, barely more than a brush of lips, but it said everything she couldn't find words for. When she pulled back, Cole was staring at her like she'd just handed him the moon. What was that for? He asked. For being you. He grinned, took the hammer back. You keep that up, I'm going to start expecting it. Maybe you should. Cole laughed, and the sound filled the yard, warm and real. And Lila realized something. She'd spent so long running from the past, from pain, from the people who'd hurt her. But here, with Cole, she wasn't running anymore. She was standing still, putting down roots, building a life that was messy and uncertain and absolutely worth fighting for. By afternoon, the addition was half finished. Lila helped where she could, holding boards steady while Cole nailed them in place, and they worked in easy rhythm. At one point, one of her students, a girl named Clara, showed up early, saw what they were doing, and insisted on helping. By the time the sun started to set, 3 more kids had joined in, and what had started as a 2-person project had turned into something bigger. When it was done, or done enough, the kids stood back and admired their work. Clara pointed at a crooked board and declared it character. Tom insisted they needed to paint it blue. Another boy, Jack, said blue was stupid and it should be red. Lila laughed, and Cole looked at her with something like wonder. What? She asked. Nothing, just, you look happy. I am. Good. He turned back to the kids. All right, who wants to help paint this thing tomorrow? Every hand shot up. That night, after the kids had gone home and the tools were put away, Lila and Cole sat on the porch. The sky was clear, stars scattered like thrown dice, and the air smelled like grass and earth and possibility. This is going to work, Lila said. The school, the kids, all of it. I know. How do you know? Cole looked at her. Because you're the kind of person who makes things work, even when they shouldn't. Lila leaned against him, and he put an arm around her shoulders. They sat like that, watching the night deepen, and Lila felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the absence of problems or pains or uncertainty, but the knowledge that whatever came next, she could handle it. Because she wasn't alone anymore. Because she'd found a place that didn't just tolerate her, but welcomed her. Because she'd chosen to stay and Cole had chosen to let her. And that was enough. The school had been running for 2 months when Mayor Dunn showed up at the ranch. Lila saw him coming from the garden, where she was showing Clara and 2 other girls how to tell the difference between weeds and seedlings. The mayor rode a gray mare, sitting stiff in the saddle like he'd rather be anywhere else. And when he dismounted, his face was the same mix of discomfort and forced politeness she remembered from Red Hollow. Lila straightened, wiping dirt from her hands. The girls looked up, curious, but she motioned for them to keep working. Cole was in the barn, and she could see him emerge, tools still in hand, his expression going hard when he recognized the visitor. Miss Hartley, Dunn said, removing his hat. It's good to see you. Is it? Not a question. Dunn flinched. I understand this is unexpected, but I've come a long way and I was hoping we could talk. About what? About Red Hollow. About what happened, about making things right. Lila crossed her arms. You had your chance to make things right. You chose not to. I know, and I'm here to apologize for that, properly. Dunn glanced at Cole, who'd moved closer, but hadn't said anything. The town council sent me. We want you to know that we've dealt with Garrett Moss. He's been stripped of his land holdings, fined, and run out of the area. The people he swindled are getting their property back, and we'd like to offer you compensation for what you went through. Compensation? Yes. We're prepared to pay you for the months you lost, plus additional funds for the damage to your reputation. Lila stared at him. You think you can pay me to forget what you did? No, we know we can't undo it, but we want to make amends. By throwing money at me. Dunn's jaw tightened. We're trying, Miss Hartley. We know we failed you. We're trying to do better. Cole finally spoke. She doesn't want your money. I wasn't speaking to you, Brennan. You're on my land. I'll speak if I want to. Cole's voice was flat, dangerous. And I'm telling you, she doesn't want your money. She's made a life here, a good one. And you showing up to ease your conscience doesn't change anything. Dunn looked between them and something like understanding crossed his face. I see. Well, the offer stands regardless. If you change your mind, I won't, Lila said. The mayor nodded slowly, put his hat back on. I am sorry, for what it's worth. It's not worth much. He winced, climbed back onto his horse, and rode away without another word. Lila watched him go, her chest tight, her hands shaking with anger she hadn't realized she was still carrying. You all right? Cole asked quietly. No. Lila turned to face him. But I will be. The girls had stopped working, watching with wide eyes. Lila forced a smile and went back to them. Where were we? Clara pointed at a plant. Is this one a weed? No, that's a carrot top. See the feathery leaves? They went back to the lesson, but Lila's mind was elsewhere. Dunn's visit had stirred up everything she'd been trying to let go of. The anger, the hurt, the sense of injustice that sat in her stomach like a stone. She'd thought she was past it, thought she'd moved on. But standing there, listening to him apologize like it could fix anything, she realized she hadn't moved on. She'd just buried it. That night, after the students had gone home and the chores were done, Lila sat on the porch and stared at nothing. Cole joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand, and set one beside her. You've been quiet, he said. I'm thinking. About Dunn? About all of it? Lila picked up the coffee but didn't drink. I thought I was done with Red Hollow. Dunn being angry, Dunn caring what they thought. But then he shows up and it all comes back. That's normal. I don't want it to be normal. I want to stop caring. Cole was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? What? I think you'll stop caring when you're ready. And trying to force it before then just makes it worse. Lila looked at him. So what do I do? Whatever feels right. He took a sip of coffee. But if it were me, I'd go back to Red Hollow one last time. Say what I needed to say, look them in the eye, and then leave for good. Why would I do that? Because right now, they still have power over you. You left on their terms, running from what they did. If you go back on your terms, you take that power away. Lila turned that over in her mind. The thought of going back to Red Hollow made her stomach clench. But there was something appealing about it too. The idea of walking into that town not as someone who'd been driven out, but as someone who'd built something better. I'll think about it, she said. 3 days later, she told Cole she wanted to go. You're sure? He asked. No, but I'm going anyway. You want me to come with you? Lila hesitated. Part of her wanted him there, wanted the solid reassurance of his presence. But this was something she needed to do alone. No, I need to do this myself. Cole nodded. All right. But if you're not back by sundown, I'm coming after you. Fair enough. She left early the next morning, riding the gentler of Cole's 2 horses. The journey to Red Hollow took most of the day, and with every mile, Lila's anxiety ratcheted up. By the time she saw the town on the horizon, her hands were sweating and her heart was pounding so hard she thought she might be sick. But she kept riding. Red Hollow looked exactly the same. Same crooked church steeple, same dusty main street, same buildings leaning into each other like they were too tired to stand straight. Lila tied her horse outside the general store and stood for a moment breathing, centering herself. People noticed her immediately. She saw heads turn, heard the murmur of voices. A woman she didn't recognize pointed, and a man stepped out of the saloon to stare. Lila ignored them and walked to the schoolhouse. It was empty. Of course it was. It was Sunday. But the door was unlocked, and Lila pushed it open and stepped inside. The room smelled the same, dust and chalk and old wood. The desks were in the same places. The chalkboard still had equations she'd written months ago, half erased and faded. She stood there, taking it in, and realized she didn't feel anything. No nostalgia, no longing, just a vague sense of distance, like looking at a photograph of someone else's life. Lila? She turned. Mrs. Calloway stood in the doorway, her face a mix of shock and something that might have been shame. "Hello, Margaret," Lila said. We heard you were doing well, that you'd found work. I have. That's good. I'm glad. Mrs. Calloway stepped inside, wringing her hands. I wanted to write to you after Moss confessed. I wanted to apologize, but I didn't know where you were. Would it have mattered? What? An apology. Would it have changed anything? Mrs. Calloway's face crumpled. I don't know, but I needed to say it. We were wrong, Lila. All of us. We should have believed you. Yes, you should have. Lila kept her voice even, calm. But you didn't, and I paid for that. I know, and I'm sorry, truly. I believe you. And she did. She could see it in the older woman's eyes, genuine regret, genuine pain, but it didn't change what had happened. But sorry doesn't give me back the months I lost. It doesn't undo the fact that you stood there and let them drive me out. I was scared. Moss had influence, and I thought, you thought protecting yourself was more important than protecting me. Lila stepped closer. And maybe it was. Maybe that's just how things work. But don't expect me to forgive you for it. Mrs. Calloway's eyes filled with tears. What can I do? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. It's done. Then why did you come back? Lila paused. Good question. Why had she come back? To yell at them? To prove she'd survived? To rub their faces in the fact that she was doing fine without them? No. She'd come back to let go. I came to tell you that I'm not angry anymore, Lila said slowly. Or I won't be, after today. I came to say that you don't get to live in my head anymore. What you did was wrong, and it hurt me, but I'm not going to carry it around for the rest of my life. I'm done. You're done? With this town. With all of you. I don't need your apologies or your guilt or your money. I just need you to leave me alone. Mrs. Calloway nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I understand. Lila turned to leave, then stopped. I'm opening a school. At the Brennan Ranch, northwest of here. For children who live too far out to attend regular classes. If you know any families who might benefit, you can tell them. You're still teaching? Of course I am. It's what I do. She walked out of the schoolhouse, leaving Mrs. Calloway standing there. Outside, more people had gathered. Frank Connors from the general store, the preacher's wife, Henry Birch, even Mayor Dunn looking uncomfortable but determined. Dunn stepped forward. Miss Hartley, we're glad you came. I didn't come for you. I know, but since you're here, the offer still stands. Compensation, and we'd like you to consider returning as our teacher. Lila looked at him. At all of them. People who judged her, abandoned her, believed lies because it was easier than standing up for what was right. And she felt nothing, no anger, no bitterness, just a profound sense of being done. I'm not coming back, she said. Not as your teacher, not for any amount of money. I've built something better than what I had here. A school where the students come because they want to learn, not because their parents force them. A life with people who trust me. And I'm not giving that up to come back to a place that didn't want me until it was convenient. We do want you, Dunn said. We made a mistake and we're trying to fix it. Some things can't be fixed. They can only be survived. Lila looked around at the gathered crowd. I survived. I built a new life. And I'm going to keep building it, far away from here. So thank you for the offer, but no. She walked to her horse, untied it, and mounted. The crowd parted to let her through, and as she rode down the main street, she felt something lift off her shoulders. A weight she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten it was there. By the time she reached the edge of town, she was smiling. Cole was waiting on the porch when she got back, the sun setting behind him in shades of orange and gold. He stood when he saw her, relief playing on his face. How'd it go? He asked. It went. Lila dismounted, her legs shaky from the long ride. I told them I wasn't coming back, that I'd built something better here. And? And they didn't understand, but that's not my problem anymore. Cole smiled. Good. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Then Lila crossed the yard and kissed him. Not a brief, tentative kiss like before, but something deeper. A promise. When she pulled back, Cole was staring at her with wonder. What was that for? For waiting. For not telling me what to do. For just being here. I'll always be here. I know. Lila took his hand. And I want to make this official. Us. The ranch. All of it. Official how? However you want. Marriage, partnership, I don't care. I just want it to be real. Cole's expression softened. It's already real, Lila. I know, but I want everyone else to know it too. He pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. Then we'll make it official. However you want. They were married a month later in the little schoolroom, with the students and their families as witnesses. There was no preacher. Lila didn't want one. So they wrote their own vows and spoke them in front of people who'd become something like family. Cole promised to stand beside her, to support her work, to never make her feel small. Lila promised to stay, to build with him, to let herself be loved. It wasn't a fancy ceremony. The decorations were wildflowers the girls had picked, and the food was simple: bread, cheese, dried fruit. But it was theirs. Real and messy and perfect in its imperfection. After, when the guests had gone home and the schoolroom was quiet, Cole took Lila's hand and led her outside. The sky was clear, stars scattered thick overhead, and the air smelled like grass and possibility. You happy? He asked. Happier than I've ever been. Good. He pulled her close, and they swayed together, dancing to music only they could hear. Because I plan on keeping you this happy for a long time. That's a big promise. I know, but I mean it. Lila rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. This was it. This was the life she'd been running toward without knowing it. Not perfect, not easy, but hers. The school grew. By winter, Lila had 12 regular students, with more asking to join. The families paid what they could, sometimes money, sometimes goods, sometimes just labor, helping fix the roof or mend the fences. It became a community. People scattered across miles of prairie coming together because they wanted their children to learn. Lila taught reading, writing, arithmetic. But she also taught other things: how to question, how to think, how to stand up for yourself. She remembered what it felt like to be silenced, and she made sure her students knew they had a voice. One day in early spring, a girl named Ruth raised her hand during a lesson. Yes, Ruth, Lila said. Miss Lila, why do we have to learn all this? My ma says girls don't need education, that we'll just get married and have babies. Lila set down her book. And what do you think? Ruth hesitated. I think I want to know things. I want to understand how the world works. Then that's your answer. Lila looked around the room at all the faces watching her. Education isn't about what other people think you need. It's about what you want for yourself. Some of you will get married and have families. Some of you won't. But all of you deserve to know how to read, how to count, how to make your own decisions. Because the world is full of people who will try to make those decisions for you. And the only way to fight that is to be smarter than them. Ruth nodded slowly. So we learn to protect ourselves. Exactly. After class, Ruth lingered. My ma says you came from a town that didn't want you, that they drove you out. Lila paused. That's true. And you came here and started over. I did. Why? Lila thought about it. Because I didn't have a choice. Not at first. But then I realized that starting over wasn't a punishment. It was a chance. A chance to build the kind of life I actually wanted, instead of the one other people expected. Ruth looked down at her hands. My pa wants me to marry his friend's son when I turn 16. I don't want to. But I don't know how to say no. You say no. That's how. But what if he doesn't listen? Then you say it louder, and you keep saying it until he does. Lila crouched down, met Ruth's eyes. You're 12 years old. You have time. Use it to learn, to grow, to figure out who you want to be. And when you're 16, if you still don't want to marry, you tell your father. And if he doesn't listen, you leave. Leave? Where would I go? Anywhere. Here, if you need to. The point is you have options. You always have options, even when it doesn't feel like it. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Miss Lila. You're welcome. Now go home before your mother worries. Watching Ruth ride away, Lila felt something settle in her chest. This was why she taught. Not to fill heads with facts, but to give children the tools to fight for themselves. To show them that the world was bigger than the small corners they'd been born into. That night, she told Cole about the conversation. You think she'll leave? He asked. I don't know. But I want her to know she can. You're giving these kids dangerous ideas. Good. They should be dangerous. Safe ideas don't change anything. Cole laughed. You're going to make a lot of people angry. I already have. Might as well keep going. He pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. That's my wife. The word still felt strange. Wife. Lila had never imagined herself as someone's wife. But with Cole, it didn't feel like losing herself. It felt like becoming more fully who she was. By summer, the school had outgrown the shed. Cole and some of the fathers built a larger structure, a real schoolhouse with windows and a proper floor. Lila cried when she saw it, overwhelmed by the generosity and the trust these families had placed in her. At the dedication, one of the fathers made a speech. Our children are learning things we never had the chance to learn. And it's because of Miss Lila, Mrs. Brennan, I mean. She didn't have to do this. She could have stayed comfortable, stayed hidden, but she chose to teach, and for that, we're grateful. Lila stood beside Cole, holding his hand, and looked at the new schoolhouse. It was more than a building. It was proof that she'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to her and turned it into something good, that she'd survived and thrived and built a life worth living. Later, as the families were leaving, a woman Lila didn't recognize approached. She was older, maybe 50, with a weathered face and kind eyes. Mrs. Brennan? The woman said. Yes? My name's Ellen Hayes. I live about 30 miles north. I heard about your school, and I was wondering, my grandson, he's 8, and he's never been to school. His parents died last year, and I'm raising him alone. Would you take him? Of course. Ellen's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. He's a good boy, but he needs someone who can teach him to read, to give him a future. Bring him next week. We'll get him started. Ellen nodded, tears in her eyes. You're doing something important here. You know that, right? Lila's throat tightened. I'm just teaching. No, you're giving these children hope. That's more than teaching. After Ellen left, Cole came to stand beside Lila. You all right? Yeah, just thinking. About what? About how strange life is. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over. And now, she gestured at the schoolhouse, at the families scattered across the yard, at the ranch stretching out behind them. Now I have this. You built this. We built this. Cole smiled. Yeah, we did. That fall, Red Hollow sent another delegation. Not to offer Lila her job back, but to ask if she'd consider opening a second school closer to their town. Lila met with them in the new schoolhouse, Cole beside her, and listened to their proposal. We've seen what you're doing here, Mayor Dunn said. He looked older, more tired than the last time she'd seen him. And we realize we made a mistake, not just in how we treated you, but in not recognizing what you were capable of. We'd like to make amends by supporting your work. Funding, supplies, whatever you need. Lila considered it. A second school would mean more children learning, more families helped. But it would also mean going back to Red Hollow, even in a limited capacity. Seeing the people who'd hurt her, working with them. I'll think about it, she said. After they left, Cole asked what she was going to do. I don't know yet. You don't owe them anything. I know. But those kids, they do deserve an education. And if I can give them that, maybe I should. Even if it means working with people you don't trust? Lila was quiet for a long moment. I don't trust them, but I trust myself. And maybe that's enough. In the end, she agreed to open a second school, but on her terms. She wouldn't work directly with Red Hollow. Instead, she'd train a teacher, someone young, someone who wanted to learn. And that person would run the school while Lila oversaw from a distance. It wasn't perfect, but it was a compromise she could live with. The teacher she chose was Emma Price, the girl who'd approached her in Pharaoh's Bend, who'd been so confused about why Lila wouldn't come back. Emma was 19 now, earnest and eager, and when Lila offered her the position, she cried. You'd trust me with this? Emma asked. If you're willing to work hard and put the students first, yes. I am, I promise. Lila spent 2 months training Emma, teaching her not just how to teach, but how to stand up for her students, how to question authority, how to build the kind of classroom where children felt safe to think. Emma absorbed it all like a sponge, and by the time the Red Hollow School opened, Lila felt confident leaving it in her hands. The opening day, Lila attended. She stood at the back of the room and watched Emma teach, watched the children lean forward in their seats, eager and curious. And she felt proud, not of Red Hollow, but of what had come from the ashes of what they'd done to her. After Dunn approached her. "This is good work, Mrs. Brennan. Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank Emma. She's the one doing the work." "Still, you could have said no. You could have let us fail." Lila looked at him. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the kids. They deserve better than what this town gave me." Dunn nodded slowly. "We all deserve better than what we gave you." "Yes, you do. But that's your problem, not mine." She walked away, and this time there was no weight on her shoulders. No anger, no bitterness, just a quiet satisfaction that she'd taken something broken and built something whole. 2 years after Lila had first arrived at Cole's ranch, the school had grown to 28 students across 2 locations. The ranch itself had expanded with new buildings and improved fences and cattle that were healthier and more profitable than they'd ever been. And Lila and Cole had built a life that was messy and hard and absolutely worth every struggle. One evening, sitting on the porch they'd repaired together, Lila looked at Cole and said, "I'm happy." "I know. No, I mean, I'm really happy. For the first time in my life, I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm just here, content." Cole took her hand. "You deserve to be. So do you." They sat in silence, watching the sun set over the prairie, and Lila thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain, the fear, the moments when she'd thought she couldn't go on. And then the choice to keep going anyway, to build, to trust, to let herself be known. She'd learned something important in those years, that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love, that starting over isn't failure, it's courage, that the people who matter aren't the ones who stand with you when it's easy, but the ones who stay when it's hard. She'd learned that home isn't a place you're born into. It's a place you build, brick by brick, with people who see you for who you really are. And she'd learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you isn't an ending, it's a beginning. A chance to walk away from the life you thought you wanted and into the life you were always meant to have. Under the wide western sky, with Cole's hand in hers, and the sound of children's laughter still echoing in her memory, Lila Brennan, realized something. She hadn't lost everything when she left Red Hollow. She'd walked straight into the life she was meant to claim. And that made all the difference.